And we are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Mishnah Mastery, where tonight, very exciting, we are going to be completing Seder Kodshim. We are going to learn the last chapter, chapter 3 of Kinnim, and in so doing, we will complete a whole entire Seder, bringing to the end this second Seder that we have learned together, having done Moed and having done Kodshim now. Very exciting. Next week, please God, we'll be starting the Zikin, starting with Bava Kama. So it's a new opportunity for people to join. And we're going to get ourselves underway. We've got our live virtual studio audience who are buzzing with excitement at the thought of being able to reach this fantastic milestone together. And so without further ado, let's get ourselves underway with chapter 3. And if I find where the Mishnah is to be able to put it on the screen, there we go. I will actually be able to see what I'm doing as well. So here we go, guys, chapter 3. So everything that we've been talking about so far, remember we've been talking about these pairs of birds, we've been talking about the mixtures and how it kind of ruins everything if these birds get mixed up, became very mathematical, trying to figure out how many birds could still be brought if mistakes were made. So that's what we've been seeing in the last couple of chapters. What we're going to see now is that everything that we've talked about so far in the last couple of chapters, it only applies if someone actually asks the question. If a Kohen comes and says, this has happened, what is the halacha? And the answers that we've been given have been the lowest possible number, or really the highest possible numbers, without any statistical errors. So this mission is going to deal with what happens if the Kohen goes and brings everything without listening to any psak halacha, without actually investigating what the halacha should be. So what we're actually going to see is that he might end up bringing more kosher birds as a result than if he didn't ask the question, because the person who asks the question would be given a very safeguarded answer, which avoids any scope for error. But actually, you could end up with more kosher birds being brought, along with a whole load of erroneous birds. So it's quite interesting. He's not allowed to do it, but if he did it, that could be the end result. So let's have a look at chapter 3, Mishnah 1. Bameh Devarim Amurim. What are we talking about here? The last two chapters where we've been working out all of these permutations. B'chohen nimlach. It's about a Kohen who goes to actually ask the Shaila, goes to ask for advice. Aval b'kohen she'eino nimlach. But if a Kohen does not go to get advice, achas lazo v'achas lazo, shtaim lazo v'shtaim lazo, shalosh lazo v'shalosh lazo. So if you've got a situation where one pair of birds belongs to one woman and another pair of birds belongs to another woman, or they've each got 2 pairs, or they've each got 3 pairs, and what he goes and does is asachulan lamala. He goes and takes all of these birds and he offers them up and sprinkles the blood above the red line on the mizbeach. Now, what's the problem over here? So we've been talking about how each of these pairs of birds is going to be comprised of a chatas and an ola, and one of those gets sprinkled above the line and one of them gets sprinkled below the line, and you're not allowed to do the other one. But what he goes and does is he goes and sprinkles all of them above the line. So mechza kosher, mechza posel. So half of the birds are going to have been done in a valid way because they were halachically correct. Umechza posel. And half of them are going to be disqualified because they were done erroneously. They're invalid. He hasn't done the mitzvah. So it's interesting because whereas the halacha might be you can only bring one of each, let's say, and he goes and brings more than that, he might have brought more kosher birds in the right way, but he wasn't allowed to do it. What about kulan lamata? Or if he goes and he brings them all below the line on the mizbeach, mechza kasher, mechza posel. Again, half of them are going to be kosher, and half of them are not going to be kosher, right? So olos go above the line, and chataos go below the line. So he'll have brought them all as a chatas, only half of them were, and half of them weren't. Chetziam lamala v'chetziam lamata. If he brings half of them above the line as an ola, and half of them below the line as a chatas, well, he doesn't know which are which. So es shilamala The ones that he brings above the line, mechza kasher, mechza pasul. Half of them are going to be kasher and half of them are going to be pasul. The es shilamata, mechza kasher, mechza pasul. And the ones below the line, half of them will have, statistically, half of them will be kasher and half of them will be pasul. Mishnah base. What about where people have got different numbers of birds? So achas lezo, one woman's got one pair. Ushtayim lezo, another woman's got two pairs. Ushalosh lezo, one's got three pairs. Eser lezo, one's got 10 pairs. Umea lezo, and one's got 100 pairs of birds. So there's a total of 232 birds here, and they've all got mixed up. So we would have seen in previous examples that lechatchila, ideally, you can't bring more than one chatas and one ola, in case you end up bringing the first lady who's only got one pair, in case you end up bringing hers erroneously because they've all been mixed together. So if you bring 116 of each, right, that's the total of 100 plus 10 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. If you bring 116 of each, you risk invalidating all the birds, which is the worst case scenario, because you could invalidate erroneously all the birds of the first four women. Since the fifth woman with 100 birds has got more than the other four combined, she could end up with 100 of hers being valid because they could have come from her birds. So it's very interesting how it could end up working out. Now I've just seen that that Steve from Tunbridge Wells has posted in the chat here. Is there ever a time when the Kohen is obligated to compensate a person for not bringing their korbanot correctly? Is there ever a time when the Kohen is obligated to compensate for not bringing the korbanot correctly? Don't know. You mean it because it's his mistake? By the way, Richard, you can just chime in.
I know, but I didn't want to interrupt you. It just seems to me that if the Kohen's not doing his job properly,
right? I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know that he is responsible necessarily for the birds getting mixed up. And if he brings them all because he didn't ask the question, then what would he have to compensate for? Because he would have brought more of them correctly. But my assumption has been so far that we're bringing these birds mixed and saying, okay, I've got 232 birds here, just go and deal with it.
Right.
And then he's either asking the Shiloh or not asking the Shiloh. But if he's not asking the Shiloh, then he's ending up bringing more. So I don't know that he would need to compensate for anything. I guess you could ask the question of, if it wasn't your fault and it was someone else's fault that all of this got messed up, and maybe there could be compensation. I guess we'll see that once we get into Seder Nezikin. I don't know. So we've got one woman with one pair, 2 pairs, 3 pairs, 10 pairs, 100 pairs. He goes and takes all 232 birds and he treats them as an ola, and he does it above the line. Mechza kasher, mechza pasul. So half of those birds will have been done correctly because they were olos, and half are going to be pasul because they were actually chatos done incorrectly. Kudalamatan, if he does them underneath the red line, same situation. Mechza kasher, mechza pasul. Half are kasher, half are invalid. Chetzia lamalan v'chetzia lamatan. So now he goes and he takes the majority. He goes and takes 116 birds, of which he's got no idea whether they are olos or chatos, and he does half of them lamala, above the line, and half of them below the line. Says the Mishnah, hamaruba kasha. So the majority are going to be kasha, and I think that is basically saying, I think it's about 84 are going to be kasha because it's the majority of the women with 100 birds. They will have been done correctly. So the majority will be all done. And the Mishnah says, Zeh haklal, this is the general rule. Kol makom she'ata yachol lachalo kesakinim v'lo yuhu mishal isha achas. Any time when you can divide up the birds v'lo yihu mishel isha achas, so that those belonging to one woman need not have part of them bein milmanan, bein milmatan, offered above or below. Mechza mechza pasul. Then half of those are going to be valid, and half of them are going to be invalid. So, anytime you can be sure that you have got half the chatas and half of the ola completely correct, then half will be kosher and half will be pasul. But kol makom she'enata yachol lachalok et kinnim ad sheyimishal ishachas. Anytime you can't guarantee this, bein milamanan, bein milamatan, then hamaruba kosher. Then it's going to be the majority of which will be kosher. So in our case, we've got woman with 100. We can't guarantee that all of hers were done correctly. But if we could, then it would be half and half. But if we can't guarantee that, then we would say that the majority will have been done correctly. Mishnah Gimel. Chatas lazor va'ola lazor. So if you have got the chatat bird belonging to one and the ola bird belonging to another, asa chulan l'malon, if he goes now and he does processes these birds above the line, mechza kasher, mechza pasul, then half are going to be kasher and half will be pasul. Chulan l'matan, mechza kasher, mechza pasul. If he does all of them below the line, half will be kasher and half will be pasul. Chetzian l'mala v'chetzian l'matan, if he does half of them above and half of them below, meaning we've got no idea if he's done the chatas in the right place or not, or the yola in the right place or not, stay impossible, then they're going to be completely invalid. She'ani omer, chatas kareva l'malan va'ola l'matan, because it could well be that this Kohen has just brought a chatas above the line, which is not allowed, and the ola below the line, which is not allowed. So there's no way of being sure, and therefore there's no way of saying that the bird that he's processed is kosher. Mishnah Dalet. Over here, we have got 6 birds. We've got a chatas and an ola. And then we've also got a stuma and a meforeshes. We've got stuma, which were birds which have been bought for a korban but not yet designated. So there's a pair there. And a pair of meforeshes, a pair of birds which have been assigned and they've all been mixed up. That's our case now. So the Mishnah says, Asa chulan l'malan, mechza kasher, mechza pasul. If he brings them above the line, so half of them, 3 of them are going to be kasher, and 3 of them are going to be pasul. Why? Because we've got these 6 birds, and we don't know which of the unassigned ones would be an ola or a chatas. You know that there were 2 assigned birds, and so if he brings them all as a chatas or all of them as an ola, so there's only going to be 3 olas and 3 chatos. So that's why half will be kosher and half will be pasul. Kulan l'matan, similarly, if he brings them below the line, mechza kosher, mechza pasul, half will be valid and half will be disqualified. Chetzian l'mala v'chetzian l'matan. So he brings half of them above the line and half of them below the line. And we know that there was already at least 2 chatats and 2 olas, because you had the ola and the chatas, and you had the designated birds, which one would have been an ola and one would have been a chatas. So I've got 4 designated birds and 2 undesignated birds. So the Mishnah says, Ein kasha ela stuma. So I apologize, actually. I've just read something in my notes here, which is that we know where the stuma, but no, one second. No, that's irrelevant. One second. Ein kasha ela stuma. So the halacha is that we know that the stumas are going to be okay. And I think the assumption here has been that we've known all along which ones were stumas. So I think I did explain it wrong. So we knew where the undesignated ones were. So when I take half above and half below, knowing where the undesignated ones were, they will be the only ones that are valid, because I knew where they were and I brought one above and one below. So I've done the right thing. V'hi mischalekes b'neihem. and those birds then get divided amongst the different people. So because we know what happened to the stuma in this case, which I hadn't explained before, that is why that can be processed and divided up as a valid bird. Mishnah Hey. So Mishnah Hey, Chatas shenis arva b'chova. You have a chatas bird which gets mixed up with undefined obligatory birds. So this person had an obligation to bring, but he hasn't designated it yet. Now, we've previously said that if a chatas gets mixed up with an undesignated pair, then you can only bring one chatas. And that's it. You can't bring an ola in case you're bringing the bird that was a chatas. And you can't bring two chataos because you might be bringing two birds from the unassigned pair. And if you're designating a pair, one of them is going to be a chatas and one is going to be an ola. So in that instance, you would have only been able to bring one bird as a chatas. So the Mishnah says, Ein kasha ela minyan chatas shabachova. You would only have the number of chataos as per the undesignated birds that you had. So if you had two birds, only one of them would be kosher to bring. Says the Mishnah, chova shnayim b'chatas. If you had twice as many chataos as the chova, as these undesignated birds, then mechza kasha u mechza pasul. Have I done that right? If the chova, if the unassigned birds, the obligatory birds, are twice as many as the chataos, then half are valid and half are invalid. Because now, if I've got, let's say, two pairs of birds, so two of them are going to be a chatas, and then I get a chatas which gets mixed in. So I know I've got three chatas out of 5 birds. So half is going to be kosher. So 2 really are going to be kosher, and 2 are going to be pasul. And then the third one would be pasul as well. If, though, if I've got twice as many chatats than my chova, then haminyan shebachova kasher. If the chataos are twice as many as the unassigned obligatory birds, then depending on how many potential chataos there could be in the unassigned pairs, that's how many chataos I would be able to bring. V'chein ola shenis arba b'chova. Similarly, if a korban ola got mixed up in with this undesignated pair of birds, ein kasha ela minyan ola shebachova. That would be the same. I would only be able to bring as many birds as an ola as I had in my undesignated pairs. Chova shnayim ba'ola. But if I had twice as many undesignated birds as my ola, mechza kasha, mechza pasul, then half would be kasha and half would be pasul. Ola shnayim b'chova. If I had twice as many olas as I do pairs of birds, haminyan shebachova kasha. I can only take as many as the number of birds that I have got. Bit of a tongue twister, that one. Mishnah Hey. No? Yes. No? Vav. Mishnah Vav. So, by way of introduction to Mishnah, which Mishnah are we on? I'm on Hey. Sorry, I'm on Vav. We apologize for that interruption. Mishnah Vav. By way of introduction to Mishnah Vav, a woman who can afford to, a woman who gives birth who can afford to, should bring a sheep as an ola and a bird as a chatas. It's a poor woman who would bring a pair of birds, one as a chatas and one as an ola. When a woman brings a pair of birds, they should both be the same species of birds, either a pigeon or a turtle dove, but can't bring one of each. So in every case in our Mishnah, which is quite lengthy, she's going to be intending to give her obligatory birds, but also to bring a voluntary pair of birds as a korban ola in honor of the celebration. But in the standard case, she hasn't specified what type of bird she's going to bring. So she's going to have 4 birds. She's going to have 3 olas and 1 chatas, because her obligatory offering is 1 chatas and 1 ola, and she's bringing an extra 2 olos. So she hasn't designated what these different things are. So let's have a look at how this plays out in the Mishnah. Ha'isha she'amra, harei alai kain keshe'eled zachar. So a woman who says that on top of my obligatory bird offerings, I'm going to bring another pair if I have a child, if I give birth to a son. Then says the Mishnah, Yolda Zachar, if she gives birth to a son, Mevia shtei kinnim, she's going to bring 2 pairs of birds. Achas lenidra va'achas lechovasa. One is going to be her voluntary pair of olos, and one is going to be her obligatory pair, one of which is a chatas, one of which is an ola. Nisanasam lakohen, she gives them to the kohen. Va'kohen sarich la'asos shalosh peridim milamalan va'achas milamatan. And the kohen's going to need to do 3 birds above and 3 birds below. But, says the Mishnah, Lo asa kain. He did not do this. Why? Because he presumed that they were just 2 obligatory pairs to be processed as 2 chatats and 2 olas. Right? Ella asa shtaim lemalan or shtaim lematan. But he did 2 above and 2 below. So one of these has been done erroneously. V'non nimlach, and he hasn't asked the question. Tzricha lahavi od prida achas v'yakrivena lemalan mimin echad. So he has to go and take another type of this bird. He has to go and take another bird and process that like an ola above the line. And mimin echad, that's talking about where this woman has brought the same type of species of bird for all of these different birds. Mishneh minin, if she goes and brings 2 different types of species. So I guess she's brought 1 pair of turtle doves, 1 pair of pigeons. So what we're going to see is that whichever pair was processed first will have been processed as the obligatory pair, 1 above and 1 below. And if he's done that correctly, he'll have brought 1 as a chatas and 1 as an ola. But then he's taken the second pair and he's got that 1 wrong. So he'll have done 1 above, 1 below, and he needed to do both above. The catch is he can't remember which species was which when he brought these 2 birds. So the Mishnah says, Mishneh minin, he's got 2 species of birds, tavi shtayim. So if he's made this mistake, he now has to bring 2 types of birds. Persha nidra, tavi shtayim, he brings 2. Mishneh minin gives 2 different types of species. They're undesignated. So tavi shtayim, she has to bring 2 others because he doesn't know if he messed up the dove or if he messed up the pigeon, and therefore she has to bring 2 more, 1 pigeon as an ola and 1 turtle dove as an ola. Persha nidra. But what happens if she had designated expressly what her neder, what her voluntary birds should be? Then the Mishnah says, Tzricha lahavi od shalosh pridim. So then she would have to bring 3 more birds. So she specified which species should be the voluntary ones. And she's brought the same species for the obligatory ones. So now she has to bring another 3 birds. It's so technical. She was bringing. So in my notes it says like this: if the kohen brings 2 chataos and 2 olos, she knows she needs 1 more turtle dove, but she doesn't know if the ones that were brought came from the species that she specified originally. Therefore, she must bring an extra turtle dove if she had pledged a turtle dove, to compensate for the missing Ola. And then she has to bring 2 pigeons in case she originally pledged pigeons. So I'm really pleased that once upon a time I understood exactly what I was writing, but now this is just way too technical. So it says the Mishnah, Perisha Nidra, if she had expressly said what her neder should be, Tzricha lahavi od shalosh pridim, she has to bring 3 birds, mimin echad, if she had brought them all as one species. But mishnei minin, if she had gone and brought 2 different species, tavi arba, so then she was going to need to bring 4 as a replacement. So if she wasn't sure exactly what she had vowed, and the Kohen isn't sure what he did first, then she has to replace everything, because the Kohen fulfilled the obligation because it was unspecified, but she doesn't know if what has been brought has been valid because it's all got jumbled up. So she has to bring 2 turtle doves and 2 pigeons because she doesn't know if the second one was valid. And even if it was valid, she doesn't know if it was the right species that had been brought or not. So she has to bring 4 birds to replace the 4 birds that were brought incorrectly. Mishnah says, Kava Nidra, if she made a definite fixture at the time of her vow, meaning she said that she was going to bring a specific type of bird together with her obligatory pair. Then tzricha lahavi od chamesh pridim mimin echad. So if it's from one species, she has to bring another 5 birds because she can't remember what she pledged. She would need 1 more of the obligatory species and 2 of each for the voluntary species. For some reason, you can see how technical this is. Mark is going to explain all of this to us afterwards using his notes. Mishnei minin, if she brings the obligatory set and the voluntary set, but she's established what the voluntary set is going to be, and it's from 2 different species, then tavi sheish, then she's going to have to bring 6 because she's going to need 4 to compensate the mistakes made on her voluntary birds, and she's going to need a pigeon and a turtle dove from her obligatory offering, because the Kohen can't remember which he did first. So that because of all of these various doubts and errors that are being made, there could be as many as 6 birds that would have to be brought in order to rectify the mistakes that are being made. Nisanasam la kohen, if she gives them to a kohen, ve'ein yadua ma nasna, and she doesn't know, or it's not known what she gave. So she doesn't know if she gave 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, or if she gave 1 of each. Halach hakohen va'asa, and then the kohen goes and does his job. Ve'ein yadoa me'asa, but he doesn't know if he's done 4 chataos or 4 olos or 2 chovos or 2 olos. So now it all gets called into question. Tzricha lahavi od arba pridim lenidra ushtayim lechovasa v'chatas echas. So now she's going to need to bring 4 more as her voluntary, 2 more for her obligatory, and then on top of that, another one as a chatas. So there's going to be 7 birds that she could end up bringing. I look forward to you all explaining this to me. Shouldn't just be my job, guys. So she doesn't know what she brought for her voluntary. And she doesn't know what was brought for her chova. And then because her chatas was in question, she has to bring another one explicitly as a chatas. Wow. Ben Azai Omer, Ben Azai says, Shtei chatos, she's going to have to bring another 2 chatos, meaning she's going to have to bring 8 as a total. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua, Rabbi Yehoshua says, Zehu she'amru, for those of us who were at the stone setting on Sunday for Jeremy Cass, this might sound familiar. This is what Rabbi Yehoshua was saying when he said the following: Keshehu chai kolo echad. When the animal is alive, when a sheep is alive, it makes one sound, meaning a live sheep will bleat or baa. Ukeshehu meis kolo shiva. But when it's dead, it can create 7 sounds. Ketzad kolo shiva. How does it create 7 sounds after it's dead? Because shtei karnav, it has 2 horns which can be made into trumpets or shofars. Shtei chatzotzros, it has 2 leg bones which can be turned into flutes. Shtei shokav, it has 2 let me start again. How do we get 7 voices, 7 sounds out of a dead sheep? Shtei karnav, 2 horns, shtei chatzotzros, get turned into 2 trumpets or 2 shofars. Shtei shokav, 2 thighs, get turned into shnei chalilin, get turned into 2 flutes. Ora, and the skin can be turned into a drum. So that's already 5 voices that it has. Me'av lenevalim, the intestines can get turned into strings for a harp. And b'nei me'av, sorry, let's try that again. Its entrails can get turned into the strings for a harp. B'nei me'av, and its intestines, lechinoros, can get turned into the strings for a lyre. Although, interestingly, the translation on the screen and the translation in my notes is different. V'yesh omrim, and there are some who say you could even get an 8th. After samro litcheles, or not an 8th, as a well, I guess it's kind of a sound, but the wool of the sheep can be turned into tcheles, which would go at the bottom of the me'il of the Kohen Gadol, which would bang against the bells and therefore create a sound. So you'd get an 8th sound out of a sheep after it dies. Rabbi Shimon ben Akashya Omer, I guess that's Rabbi Hananiah's brother. Rabbi Shimon ben Akashya says, Ziknei am haaretz, old people who are ignorant, kol zman she mazkinim, as they get older, datan mitarefes aleihen, their intellect gets more and more confused. Shene'emar, as it says as a pasuk in Iyov, Meisir safa le'ne'emanim v'tam zekenim yikach. He removes the speech of men of trust and takes away the sense of elders. Aval ziknei Torah einan ken. But as scholars get older, this is not the case. Ela kol zman shemazkinin, as they get older, datan misyasheves aleihen, their mind becomes more composed, more settled, more their wisdom becomes more intense. So this is brought as a kind of, not parallel, it's almost like a follow-on. In the same way that a sheep becomes more intense, becomes more, brings more to the world with its death, so too as Talmidei Chachamim get older, they bring more to the world. Their wisdom becomes more intense. Shne'emar b'shishim chachma v'arach yamim tavuna. As it said, with aged men comes wisdom and understanding in length of days, which is also pasuk in Iyov. And the fact that I have been able to so poorly explain so many Mishnayos in Seder Kodshim, I can only be concerned that I am still on the level of an Aretz, losing my, getting more and more confused as time goes on. But hey, we'll come together in a few years' time and we'll start it all over again. And please God, we'll all be able to understand everything much more clearly. But for now, Mazel Tov everybody on completing Maseches Kinnim, and double Mazel Tov on completing the whole of Seder Kodshim to the best of our ability. You can join me as we say the following: Nishlama Maseches Kinnim v'kulahu Mesechaisa de Seder Kodshim. We have completed Maseches Kinnim and all of the Masechtas of Seder Kodshim. And please God, in Yirtzeh Hashem, when we find the right time, B'Shar Tova, we will make a siyum together in Shul. We will have some refreshments. We will celebrate with the community. But for now, I wish you Mazel Tov. thank you all for joining me, and looking forward, please God, at our next opportunity to start learning Seder Kodshim together. It's really a fantastic achievement, guys. 2 Sidorim of Mishnah, and when we consider New Year's Eve, going into 2020, was when we first started talking about starting this shir. I'm pleased that 3 years later we are 2/6 or a third of the way through learning all of Shas Mishnah. So it's wonderful. Mazel tov, everyone, and we'll see you next time.